Okay, so today we have a bit of a special podcast, even though I like to think they're all special. But following the podcast with John McGinley, who was a big Celtic media personality, that we spoke a lot about Powerchair football and potentially getting bigger clubs involved in the sport of Powerchair football. I thought it'd be a good time to have someone pretty high up in the ranks of European Powerchair football, and that is the European Powerchair Football Association President Donal Byrne. How are we doing, Donal?
I'm good, Kieran. I'm doing okay. Thanks, and thanks for having me on today.
Now, people might not know this, but you actually had a big involvement in the start of this podcast.
Yeah,
Um, no,
that's true. Yeah.
it's not something I've actually spoken about much, but I went on a course in the Football for All leadership program a few years ago. I think it was 2019, pre-pandemic, and I remember we tried. The idea of it was to come up with a project that could help, you know, elevate what you were doing in your sports area. And I remember sitting down with you specifically one night saying that I think maybe like I can talk, I can do things like that. And I'm not sure the podcast idea came up, and I'm pretty sure it might have been you that suggested it potentially. And I remember going, oh, I don't know if I could do that. It seems like talking into a microphone and all that was very sort of sketchy about it all. And even in the classes where I was having to talk in front of people, I remember feeling a bit uncomfortable about that actual thought of doing that. So to
Yeah.
be here now, 70 odd interviews in and talking to you is it's a crazy story.
Yeah. Well, I think you've done a great job, and as one of the graduates of the Football for All program, I know they're delighted with the work you've done with the project, and it's really taken off, and for, as you say, 70 shows in shows the longevity of the idea. And it's really great tribute to you for taking it to different levels, from where it was at the start, and progressing to where it is now.
No, I really appreciate that, and I think that the people at the Football for All program probably deserve a mention in this. Like Jose and Joanne were very good
Yeah,
to me and very supportive, and I was very. It was a shame that I couldn't make the graduation in London just now, but they are great people that I would just want to help make things better, and I would never have done this without the two of them and yourself. So that is very much
yeah.
appreciated. But
Yeah, no, it's a great program, and there's been others as well, like Owen Swift and Brad Bates and Jason Browning, and Lewis. Of course, Lewis was the first one that Lewis McConnell was the first one that we sponsored. So yeah, no, and great, as I say, great alumni, as I think you're called now, of graduates as well, and long may it continue. Hopefully, there's a lot more other people who can get involved, and yourselves who have been through the program then can guide them to create some great similar projects.
Well, it does make a big difference, and that this. Speaking of continuing, this podcast will continue and go from strength to strength. It's a pleasure to finally have you on. I wanted to kind of dive into the EPFA, and
Mm-hmm.
for people that maybe haven't heard of it before and are still getting more familiar with the sport, we've had kind of what I would say is a boost in reaction to Powerchair football with the past week or so from the John McGinley podcast, and I thought this would be a great follow up to that. So, just explain to people a bit about what the EPFA is and what you're trying to do there.
Yeah, well, I mean, the EPFA is really, I suppose you could equate it to the UEFA of Powerchair football. So, we're the zone that represents the European members, in the same kind of hierarchy as FIFA, and we have FIPFA. So, currently in FIPFA, there's three zones. We've yet to see development of the African zone, but hopefully, that will happen at some stage. But yeah, so there's the European zone, there's the America zone, which covers North and South America, and then there's the Asia Oceania zone. So we're probably, and as we're growing, we're we're the zone with the most members at the moment of the three, which is why we're very close to having our second nations competition, because of a necessity to have, because of our growing numbers, to need pre-qualifiers now for our events. So it's testimony to our growth in terms of numbers. We're up at 13 now, with probably another four or five that within maybe 2 years, 3 years will hopefully have joined our numbers. So we'll be maybe up at 18, maybe pushing to 20 in a few years. So but yeah, I mean, that's as a zone, we're charged with organising competitions, helping members to become members. It often starts off with just a contact, from somebody who says, we'd love to start Powerchair football in our country. And, it can be a long process, or a steady process of working with a contact to, develop, get more people involved around them, and, give from our experiences, because, we've all been there, from my experience with Ireland, and how we developed to become, a stable member and grow within the competitions. So it's a very kind of steady process to becoming a member that can stand on its own two feet, and take those steps to starting your first step up onto the international stage, getting your league structure right, and running, getting more people involved, more clubs set up. So there's lots of different areas to being a member of EPFA, and being a national association.
I think he's doing a great job handling all that. It's a very big workload, and the sport has definitely grown. But we'll go into those competitions you speak about shortly. I'm sure there's a lot of competitions we need to talk about here that are coming up soon. But as you were saying that, it made me think about the growth in the sport I've seen, and I was just wondering about how long have you actually been involved in it, and see from the time that you've been involved in the sport, there's a lot made about the fact that I've heard this stat quite a few times, that it is the fastest growing sport in the UK, and you're seeing it on BT Sports now. We've had bits on Sky Sports and different things like that. Like, did you ever think it was going to grow at this extent, and what do you see it becoming in the future?
Yeah, well, I think I've been involved 13 years now, and yeah, I think that that I've always believed in the growth potential. I think, like anything, if you can access funding, if we could access more funding, across from either national associations to the European Association to FIFA, you can do a lot with an injection of finance. But I think for what we do with what we have, I think is we present a great sport, and I think it's definitely growing. The interest is growing. We know that from having new contacts from new countries, and just you see the level of the countries that are playing it. The levels that they now in the presentation of the teams, and how the events, and as you say, we'll probably talk about events shortly, but our most recent one up in Newton Ards in Northern Ireland, again, it was a step up for us in terms of presentation with the live stream, adding to how we could present that with new cameras and new technology. And I think even with the teams put so much into the preparation for that event in both in the April one and the May one. The level of play was very good, and just how the teams presented themselves, like and again it was great to see the four FAs get behind each team as well. So I think the more of that, the more that football associations, mainstream football clubs and all get involved with Powerchair football, like it's kind of a win-win for us, and it's a win-win for them.
No, 100%. It's very exciting times. So let's go into these tournaments then, because you mentioned the tournament in May in Northern Ireland, which was Scotland was involved in that, and it was a very the setup of it all was very professional and had a big feel to it, a great atmosphere. And for us as for Scotland, just to comment on that, I think we learn a lot playing against teams like the two Irish teams in England, because you're able to develop your game that way, and it's exciting. Even from the time that we went in 2019 to now, we had a bit of a break, obviously because of the pandemic, but you could see that there's this desire for everybody to learn more and want to do more. And when it's played well, it's an exciting game to watch.
No, I agree, and I think that comes so well from, I think, players just watching other, looking back at previous tournaments, and I know there's a lot of players out there who will go back and watch games on the live stream and really forensically look at the play and look at the top teams out there like England, France, and they'll they'll analyze games and so I think that was seen at those tournaments, that there was no kind of the teams that were there was no team that was out of place. There was all the matches were there was something in it. I think everybody left that tournament with something. Yourselves winning in Scotland, winning your first match against Northern Ireland, and then I think Northern Ireland scoring against England, the European champions. So there was a lot of huge positives, I think, in those events. And again, it's kind of each event, that, as you say, that looked professional, and it ran very well. So that sets the bar then for all the tournaments going forward, like, and then each time trying to improve things, again, with the whether it's more increasing the live stream with more commentators, and different things like that we can bring to each event, learn from the events that we've done, and then move forward to the next ones.
And it makes every next event bigger and better, because you're learning every time how we can present this in a better way. And now we've got one coming up next week.
That's right.
The EPFA Cup, I believe that's what it's called. And what this now, obviously, I've been training a lot for this and talking about it a lot, but I don't think I've necessarily went over the specifics of the tournament. But I'll let you explain it a little bit. But what I want to say about this is, what I find really cool about this is, like you say, because there's more nations coming in, you need to have. It used to be a case of, for the Euros and for the World Cup, we just need to get anyone that we can get to be in it, type of thing.
Yeah.
And now it's a case of, actually you need to qualify for these things. So the format of the EPFA Cup, I'll let you talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, because as I say, it has several prongs to the tournament, I suppose. Because, as you say, back in 2011, when Ireland first thought about competing internationally, like we just decided the 2011 World Cup, and there was no kind of pre-qualification. You just put your hand up and said, yeah, we want to take part. So we got to go to the World Cup, and we had only kind of formed the National Association 2 years earlier. But then, as you say, more countries have come on board since 2011. Our Nations Cup, which we had the first one, the inaugural one in Ireland in 2014, and then we had the one in Finland in 2019. But yeah, there's at that stage, 2019, there was really only 7 teams that could really enter then, because the other countries that have progressed since just weren't ready. So yeah, I mean, out of 2019, then we realised that there were going to be more countries in a couple of years, and that we would need another kind of qualifying tournament, because in the kind of hierarchy, our EPFA Nations Cup is a zone qualifier, going back to the being a zone. Ourselves, the America zone, and the Asia Oceania, have to run a competition, a major competition, a standalone competition as it is. Like, it's our European Championships for the European zone, as a standalone competition, but it also needs to be a qualifier for the next World Cup. So in this kind of hierarchy, the EPFA Cup happening in Geneva next year is going to be a qualifier to get into our Nations Cup, which will be a qualifier for the next World Cup. So it's not just a tournament, and great for whichever teams comes out victorious, but there is another side to it, that there's 3 places up for grabs to progress to the next stage of getting into the major European Championships, and then with the dream of going from that to qualifying for a World Cup.
No, there's a lot in the line for sure, and I want to get into how the Scotland camp is feeling about this briefly, but before we go into that, I just want to outline exactly who's in this tournament and how it's going to be structured. So there's 7 teams.
Yeah.
I don't want to get them wrong.
You have the likes of Switzerland and Belgium, who would have been in competing before in tournaments, but different players, and some that are still around, certainly on the Belgian team, and some on the Swiss team. But there's new players have come in as well, but they're kind of returning to the international stage. Then you have the likes of yourselves and Austria, who have had a bit of taste of competitive action, and then you have 3 new countries who Italy, Germany, and Spain, who are their first experience really of an international tournament.
Now, what I think is really cool about that is that Italy, Spain, and Germany are known as pretty big European giants in terms of mainstream football.
Yeah.
And how much of a benefit do you think having countries like that getting involved could bring in terms of putting more of a spotlight on the sport?
Yeah, I think so. As you say, like they're pretty big when when you think of the success of all 3, of Italy, Germany, and Spain, in terms of World Cups that they've won and everything. So I think, yeah, it's the color that the color of the shirts that come with them as well. Like to see the and I think that'll be evident in Geneva, like to see them playing in the colours, and to hear the national anthems of those 3 countries along with the rest. But yeah, I think it's important to have just such a diverse mix of European countries. I know those 3 countries. I think Spain have a good association with their FA, but like the Germany and Italy. But competing in these tournaments will hopefully be kind of a knock on the door for Italy and Germany, then to say, like, go to their FAs and say, we've just been in this competition, and hopefully that will bring in itself more support. And I think that that's the way UEFA see it. They want the national associations to be working more closely with the football codes of Powerchair and all the other football for all disciplines. And it's certainly something that, as part of our partnership with UEFA, that that's something that we have to help deliver as well. That that there is that kind of pushing for greater association between the two. And I think, and again, go back to the home nations. We see the benefit of, the England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland FAs. That whether it's international caps, whether it's being able to wear the national jersey, and just the involvement of high performance. And certainly in England, like they were taken within the whole high performance after their 2011 finalist appearance in the World Cup in Paris. So it's definitely, I think, it's important that we, as I say, Italy, Germany, big powerhouses in football, that to have them in the competition. And we have another few coming along, like Portugal and the Netherlands. And so as a zone, I think we'll be well represented by all the great footballing nations going forward.
For sure. I think that I want to go into a bit about the relationship with UEFA that you spoke about briefly there. But just to touch on everything you said, one of the things that I find particularly exciting about it is, when you look at the scale of it now, England and France are sort of seen as the two really top teams that are hard to kind of compete with because their levels are so good. But one of the reasons why they are such a high level and can play that style of football is the fact that they have that pool of players.
Yeah,
they're big nations, so they're going to have more players and more options. And the thing about your Italy, Germany, Spain is that they're going to have the same thing.
yeah.
With more exposure, there's definitely got to be some top class powerchair football players there that haven't been discovered yet.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I suppose when you said that they probably will have the numbers, and again, it'll probably come down to the equipment then, because those three nations will probably come to this tournament, with a mixture of equipment. So it's, again, probably by the next tournament, they'll have progressed, with more teams, more of the Powerchair football chairs, but yeah, I mean, you can't. What you say is exactly true. Like the likes of England have 100 clubs. France have 4 divisions. So yeah, they have a pool of players that. There's a lot more. There's regional leagues, and there's a lot more opportunities. So the more chances you have to play in whether it's national leagues, regional leagues, the more opportunities to play, the more you get the chance to just to progress and to move everybody kind of forward in terms of technical ability and just improving with giving more opportunity for coaches to come in. And so I mean, the more practice that countries get, because some of the geographics, sometimes it's hard to run some of the countries, and you've probably known yourself because you've done a lot of travel up and down all over the place in the UK to play for football and training and everything. So there's great commitment there, to actually to develop clubs and to bring people on.
Well, speaking of that, I think that everything with disabilities tends to be a bit slower. Like, we're talking about the relationship with UEFA and how this is what UEFA want the associations to do, but that message can sometimes take a while to get over to these associations. And one thing that I've realised in my time in the sport is that you need to force the issue.
Mm.
It's you can be as polite and nice about it as you can, but sometimes you need to just get in people's faces and let them know, this is what's happening here. And for me, it's a case of I looked at the sport in Scotland and was like, well, how can we make this last? How can we make this sustainable? And everyone knows in Scotland how much of an impact your two big Glasgow clubs have, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Celtic and Rangers, or if you're Rangers, you say Rangers, Celtic. Either way, you know that if you can get them involved, you can sustain the sport long term. And you spoke about how, I know we'd mentioned in the past that UEFA are pushing for clubs to have this affiliation for powerchair football, and because there's obviously a lot of different disability sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I think is important to emphasise, because it was one of the things that I had to explain in the meeting with Celtic. Obviously, I can't share everything that was said in the meeting, but there were certain things, like we're involved in different elements of football. We're already in the space. Why do we need to do powerchair football? And I think that the biggest thing that's sort of misunderstood or isn't really explained enough is that, with all these different levels of football, as long as you can walk in some way, you're always going to find some way of playing football. But for powerchair users, the only way that I can describe it is it is the what I would call the most critical version of a disability, as in you are the most affected by it because you're so limited in what you can do from a sports point of view.
Yeah.
So powerchair football really is the only sport that a powerchair user can play, which is, and the thing is, if you don't use a powerchair, there's some sort of sport out there for you. I don't know how, but I just know there's so many sports that you can do and that everyone's adapted. But if you use a powerchair, and also just briefly explain the difference between a powerchair and a manual chair, because people seem to get this confused all the time.
Yeah.
I know that wheelchair is sort of a more recognised term, right? But essentially, what I'm saying is, for anyone that doesn't understand, a powerchair is what you would, has a battery to it, and you use, a joystick to move it and stuff like that. Whereas a manual chair, you're pushing it with your arms, so you're physically able to do that and play like wheelchair basketball and stuff like that. So what I was explaining to them is, we are the most vulnerable type of disability that only has, this is the only option. So if this isn't here for after myself and you, then we are going to have generations of wheelchair users that can't play any sport.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it becomes such an important thing to sustain. I'm sure you've seen that loads throughout your time in the sport, how it can impact people's lives off the pitch just as much as on it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the real benefits that you see, and you see, the commitment, like, as I say, of how far people are prepared to travel, long distances to games and travel across Europe to competitions. And so, yeah, I mean, it's huge, like. But I think the more exposure we get, and I think you might have mentioned at the start, the Disability Cup that was on BT Sport, and that it was I think it was a great it was this year's one was a great showcase, and the goal that was scored to win it, or to equalise, I think it was watched by over 1 million people within that weekend. Like, just so there's so many people that say so often, "Oh, I never knew that sport existed." Like, so it's just trying to get that message out there, and get more people involved. And I know UEFA kind of put that on us, but they also, I know, do press their associations and say, their own funding is dependent on them, starting to do more in the area of disability sport. And so it's kind of, it's they're pushing, but they're also looking at us then to kind of work with the FAs on how to actually set things up or to give them advice on how to develop a program and get it. You can't just set it up like the next day. There's a kind of a process that they need to identify players. They need to run some taster days first, and then kind of the right structure needs to be in place for it to be a sustainable new member.
Definitely. I mean, when you look at we spoke about the 2011 World Cup there. Even from 2011 to now, the growth has been huge.
Yeah.
And there's the only. So when you think about 2011 to now, the amount of development they've had, whereas when you go from what's the next 10 years going to look like?
Yeah.
And this is what I was saying to Celtic, was that this is inevitable. This sport is growing, and I thought it was important to emphasise how where we're at with our disabilities, because I've like in the time that I've been playing it, like I've lost a lot of friends that have sadly passed away, and
Yeah.
and when you experience that and you're at those funerals and things, it makes you fight for makes you fight for things a bit more, and realize time is of the essence for these things. It's not a case of like we need to give these people as many happy moments as we can, and I came into the sport as somebody that was very very young, and didn't really know much about myself. But what I do know is that this sport helped me become comfortable with being in the wheelchair, and I love football, and the connection you get through football is amazing. But I thought the connection of kind of realising that, like, hey, I'm not going through this myself, was sort of a bigger point than anything else. And very few things can get through to you like that. But football does that, and that's what makes it such an important thing to sustain. But when you mention like how UEFA are pushing these associations, let's go into clubs a little bit, because I think that throughout the time in sport, the idea has always been, well, we can't necessarily go through mainstream clubs and get them to do their own sort of, rather than it being like a separate thing through like a foundation or something like that. Because you talked about getting players and getting the set up and things, but a good example of this is Manchester United. When they first started the club, the guy that one of their longest serving players, I had a good chat with him a while back, and he was mentioning that one of the things that really helped them was Man United advertised it on half time one of the games on the board, and they got like 20, 30 applicants right off the bat of that. So many phone calls and different things. So the players are there, the funding is there, the equipment is there. The only thing that's not there is the exposure.
Yeah.
And we need, guys like yourself and the associations are really pushing, but the players need to realise that what's going to get it over the line, what's going to get it pushing, is we are working together and we share our story and we put it out there and explain to these people how much this means. And my initial goal was for the Celtic team to be through the foundation. I quickly realised, if I want it to take me seriously and I want the sport to be sustained the way I want it to be, like I think that they I think I've managed to sort of get them on board the idea of doing it through as an actual club. So like a women's team, men's team, and a powerchair football team. And that, what I explained to them is how much that would change the whole dynamic of things, because as soon as one big club does it, a lot of other clubs are going to follow in that regard. And that's what I was kind of pushing to them and saying, like, look, we can change this whole landscape of this by doing this.
Yeah.
And I think that so when we were talking about like, Spain, Germany and Italy there before, I look at that and I look at that in my head, automatically starts thinking about Barca and Real and Bayern Munich and Juve and Inter, AC Milan, stuff like that. Like all these big European clubs that could get involved in this and bring so much exposure to it, to the nations. How difficult a process has that been to try and encourage these clubs to get involved? Do you think that we're seeing any progress that way?
Yeah, no, it has been difficult, and I think we were on that football for all. It was that one that I think I dropped in for a day to Portugal. There was the kind of the head guy of was he from Porto, or was he from he was from one of the big clubs anyway.
Benfica. It was Benfica.
Benfica, yeah. And I remember, you know, trying to get in touch with him afterwards, and yeah, I mean, at the time it was all, you know, yeah, that this is what we want to do, but again, it was a kind of, you know, something that the interest was there, but it was very hard to you know get it from the interest stage to actually doing something. So I think, yeah, a lot of the times there's definitely that initial, oh yeah, we'd love to do something like that, but it's just so hard to kind of push it towards action. And whether that's with the FAs or, as I say, you know, England in 2011, you know, they got to the final of the World Cup, and it was actually, you know, the FA came looking for England then to come into the international program. It was a case of success, you know, brought success. So I think, yeah, so for some of these teams, as I say, even being at this tournament in next week in Geneva, hopefully that's kind of, you know, with some good coverage, some good, you know, footage of matches and photographs and all it, you know, it gives another kind of stepping stone that they can go to their FAs and say, look, we're just been at our first international competition, and you know, we've represented the country proudly, and we want your support to help us get to the next level.
No, definitely. You know, it's interesting that you say that, because I think there's a lot to be made about the fact that, you know, as much as they recognise it's a good thing, it's a good cause, it's a feel good story, but there's also that business side of them that goes, well, what are we getting out of this kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's something I've realised as well, is you can have the most passionate, heartfelt thing in the world, but then they're like, well, what is your business plan? What is the actual goal of this? You know? And
because as you say, our sport is, you know, to get it, you know, they're probably looking at it as, you know, they would want to see the you know the best chairs, and when they see what a chair costs, and you know, they're doing the maths on you know, an investment in something like that is, you know, they you know, a lot of these clubs would want instant return. So again, it's building that structure of having the players, then having the equipment, and then being able to, you know, compete in leagues, national leagues, and you know, as I say, success breeds success.
But this was one of the big reasons why I wanted to do the podcast in the first place.
Yeah.
Was to put a bit of pressure on teams and the associations to say, look, this sport is here and it's making this difference. And one of the points that I was making to them was about the fact that there is, you know, that benefit of, so see, when you, if I go into a big club and say, look, this is why I want this, and give them that big kind of passionate story as to why this makes sense to me and why you should do this, that's one thing. But it's easy to say no if it's just one person.
Mm-hmm.
They need to know that there's momentum behind it, that there's a cause for this, which is why, you know, getting media attention, like we had Sky Sports come to one of our Scotland training sessions, and that literally came through me putting a tweet out talking about the sport, talking about how it was like during the pandemic and how great it was to have it back and things like that, and it got a good reaction, and they caught on to it, and all of a sudden Sky Sports started training, and it brings that kind of exposure. So it's so actually easy to get the exposure for this because it's all there, and it's a case of see, as long as you know that the sport is enjoyable to watch and it's exciting to watch,
Yeah.
and you believe in that, the next part of it is sharing our stories and saying, because football is the biggest sport in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and if we could even just get a sliver of that audience, we're going to be doing well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it's a constant, as you say, it's constant. Like it's you know, look at the women's football. Like, you know, it's you know how that kind of really took off, and you know how the success now of England winning the Euros will I'm sure filter all the way down now to girls' participation. But it's yeah. I mean, you're battling. Your next day's news, like, you know, it's the Premiership's back now, and it's you know, that's you know, you have to just keep plugging away, to fight for that kind of opportunity and you know, that audience and chance. And sometimes it's just a chance. As you say, you made a tweet there, and Sky Sports come to a training session, like, so. It's kind of up to us all to keep the pressure on, to keep promoting the sport, to keep just getting, you know, presenting it, even, you know, the presentation of the sport, you know, catching the eye of. You never know who's watching.
100%. Definitely. I mean, who knows? We could have some big names watching this.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, you know, and it's a case of when I'm doing these things, you know, we're in the age of information, right? And you mentioned women's football. And women's football has been an example that I've used all the way through this in these discussions with different teams, is the fact that there was a stage where a women's team would seem so far-fetched and ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And it should never have been like that anyway. But we are in the same position as that. It's just because, but we're even more marginalised because it's also disability, which is famously not known for being in the mainstream.
Yeah.
Unless you're under the bracket of a Paralympic sport.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's incredible to me, because the moment that I started talking to them about this and saying, well, if you look at, like, women, it was like everyone in the room just kind of looked at me and was like, I think maybe he might have a point here, you know. And that is, it's crazy, because it does snowball, and I feel like in the next 10 years you're going to see that progress even more.
Yeah.
And you're talking about success breeds success. Like, if Scotland qualifying for the Euros in this tournament, we will get coverage for that.
Yeah.
Because that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it will come at a great time where Celtic are seriously considering getting involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that, and I know that if they give this the green light and they do, you know, they essentially what they're essentially doing by doing a club is professionalising the sport in this country.
Yeah.
And then that makes other countries go, well, if they're doing that, maybe we should be doing that.
Yeah.
It's all a domino effect, and this is why, you know, this is why you need to go for the top. I actually, you were talking about how it just comes from taking a chance. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I happened to be telling somebody this at a foundation meeting like a month or so ago, right? And didn't really know who the guy was, and I'm telling him the whole thing, and I wrote down this whole, I've made this a 3-year development plan, and, you know, a lot of detail in it as to why we should do this and how it would work and all this. And the guy that I'm talking to about this happened to be the club secretary, Celtic Football Club secretary, and he also happened to be the guy that made the Celtic women's football team.
Okay.
So, so the Celtic women's football team was originally through the foundation, but the foundation don't do anything competitive. That's always been their mantra, like, kind of idea of what to do. So eventually the women's team had to transfer into through the club. And what I'm essentially trying to do is skip that step and saying, look, you guys don't do anything competitive, so let's do it through the club. And I had to make the point to them, like, the guy said to me in the meeting, like, what do you, because it's also, you need to realise, like, as much as I'm a Celtic supporter and there's that sort of personal, passionate thing about it, you need to realise at the end of the day, the cold hard facts are it's like a £60 million operating business.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is, you know, if you take away your own personal views on it. And the guy looked at me and he says, you know, so what do you do? What are you going to do if that doesn't happen? Like, if we say no to this?
Yeah.
And there was like this moment, the room went all quiet, and it was as if I would just go to see if I was just going to crumble at that question.
Yeah.
You know what? And I just looked at him and said, I think what you need to understand is that I'm not going away.
Yeah.
And and you know, no is not really an option for me here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it happens now or years from now, the fact of the matter is, this is more than me. It's already progressing that way. England are already doing it, and this has all happened within a 10-year period. What's going to happen in the next 20, 30 years? And do Celtic want to be leading it, or do they want to be falling behind everyone else because they didn't take the chance when they should have? And I think that was sort of the moment where the room realised, okay, we're going to need to figure something out here because this guy's a bit crazy.
Yeah.
And you know, that's what comes out. You need to be crazy. You need to put yourself on the line and show them that this is the cause that I'm willing to fight for. So you're asking me, what do you do if we don't do this? Like, my response to that is you're going to do it.
Yeah. But I think you know, opportunities like and you know, we have made the bid again for the Paralympics. FIFA have applied for Paralympic inclusion again, and if that came through, you know, straight away, like you'd have you'd a lot more funding available to some of the countries, because from their Paralympic movements, you'd have some countries that who may at the moment be reluctant to get involved because it's not a Paralympic sport, because they kind of put more emphasis on sports that are Paralympic straight away, like some of the Nordic countries like Norway and Sweden, and they I'm sure take a much closer look at Powerchair football. So it's those kind of things that again would expand our sport straight away and lead to another competition that you'd have to be qualifying for the Paralympic competition then, which would be great. Would be great to be part of the movement.
So that's definitely, I think that's actually something we should talk about a little bit, because a lot gets made about the draw of the Paralympics on its own. Now, for people that don't know, obviously the classification is a big thing in our sport, but it's trying to explain a little bit like the process of becoming a Paralympic sport and why, what is the sort of stumbling block as to why that hasn't happened quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of, I think, 5 or 6 different kind of tests that you have to pass. One of the big ones is activity. So, you have to be a sport of, I think it's 23 nations playing your sport. I think that's the minimum. If you have more, great, but you have to have that minimum. I think we've always, just about made that grade, but the problem is that they don't Paralympics, when they go to review the application, they don't just take that as face value. They don't just say, okay, they listed all these countries here. They actually do go and check, and they do background checks. They go looking at websites of to find websites, to find where is the evidence that activity has been taking place, that there's websites that show competitions, national competitions. So we have fallen down a bit in that area in the past, that national associations just don't have a kind of a good kind of backstory of photographs and evidence that they're really engaged in Powerchair football. Classification wise, I think we've always ticked the box. Our head classifier wrote the classification rule book with Paralympic focus, so they've always considered to be our classification system to be compliant with what they expect. And then probably the other one is anti-doping, which is a big thing in Paralympics. And again, unfortunately, with the pandemic and all, and the postponement of the World Cup, we would have had a World Cup that would have had anti-doping already implemented and everything for this bid. But because of the postponement and all, it's kind of now showing them that we have it, ready to roll out or in place. And I know in the Home Nations in Newton Ards there was anti-doping education for all the teams, and again it'll be part of the EPFA Cup, just to educate players about what will happen at events. But anti-doping is another kind of box ticking one. And then you learn things along the way. But if we were to come into the Paralympics, we obviously bring quite a if it was to be an 8-team competition or whatever, we bring a lot of athletes, a lot of carers. So you add I only realised that there's only a certain quota of athletes and numbers that Paralympics can have. So obviously, if we were a sport that was to get Paralympic status, we obviously bring eight. I think you probably wouldn't bring the same number of that you would to one of our competitions. You'd have to reduce the numbers a little bit, but we obviously that's another consideration. And I suppose you could say there's a lot of politics goes into the decision as well of who gets in and who doesn't get in. And we might have fallen a bit foul of that as well. And I think there has been a little bit of resonance on Paralympic side saying that it's actually more about the chair rather than the athlete. It's a powered wheelchair, so that they kind of view it that other sports, it's the skill level of the athlete. They may see it that it's actually a lot to do with the chair and the speed of the chair rather than the actual physical skill and of the athlete. So there's a whole kind of myriad of reasons, why, and maybe it'll all come down to just luck or chance sometime that they will say yes. Rather than we can present the best possible case for it, but at the end of the day, it comes down to a committee decision, and we know from committees that there can be all sorts of reasons why a decision would go against you. So, but I suppose the main thing is to keep trying, to keep making the applications, but it's just hard when it's it's a 4-year cycle before this one is for the LA 2028, so that seems a long way away, but and I think we'll know in 2 years' time or something whether successful or not. I think it's their third kind of main time to apply. And obviously, I think we got further. The furthest we had in the last bid, so hopefully we can go that step closer in this one.
Well, I think it's safe to say, based on what you're saying, that there's been good progress, especially in the area of anti-doping and classification, things like that. And then the chair aspect for me just comes down to putting the awareness out there, a lack of awareness as to what the sport actually is and how it gets played. Because anyone that plays powerchair football knows that it is not the chair, but the person in the chair that makes it good. Because I've seen people with the best chairs that are hopeless. so there's that. But as you're saying that, I think it's important to stress that, like, in the time that you've been in the sport, as well as myself, like, how much of a difference do you think you've seen in terms of, like, the way that players are approaching the game from considering themselves more athletes than just participation?
Yeah, no, I think there is, and I think and we kind of delved into the psychology side as well, because we've run a number of psychology sessions when COVID was around, but we also continue to do it. But I think there's players kind of do take a lot more focus on their training, getting even doing individual training to get them up to a higher level, and I believe there are a lot of players out there who look after their diet and their the amount of sleep they get, and I think the more players are trying to train better, to be more as they work on the mental side of the focus of putting the actual physical and mental tips that maybe they've picked up into improving their game.
Well, it's definitely like maximizing performance. I mean, when you do everything you can to maximize your performance, you're elevating the standards of the game and the way that it's perceived from a professional standpoint. We talked about the EPFA Cup. When this podcast comes out, it will be during the tournament where I'll be in Geneva and representing Scotland. And for the last 8 weeks, I have been training every day in very warm halls to prep myself for how warm it was going to be in Geneva. And I have been in the gym every day for the past 7 weeks to make sure that I'm in. Because the thing is, not everybody can do that, and I recognise not everybody in the wheelchair can do that. But particularly for guys with cerebral palsy, we still do have some of that movement, and it definitely helps to speed up your train of thought. So I have looked at this like a training camp, a really intense training camp, where I've been training in heat and things like that to get myself physically and mentally ready for this tournament. And that's the side of things that I don't think people would expect to see from somebody in a wheelchair, or to know how, and even people that can't move at all, they spend their days watching videos and eating the right things and getting their mind right, like from a psychological point of view, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And all these things come into it. Like, we don't just turn up to a national tournament thinking, oh, let's just have a kick about. Everybody, this is our life.
Yeah.
And it's all very important to us. And I said I was going to touch on how Scotland are feeling going into this. We are. What's really cool for us is that Scotland aren't really known for winning tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And it's dawned on us that this is a very big opportunity for us to go and win a trophy for Scotland. If we all believe that we're capable of doing that. But it's not just that. Like, for myself and everyone else, we're all dedicating ourselves on the pitch, off the pitch, to make sure that we're going there in the best way that we can. And what I've tried to do is kind of lead by example that way, and make sure that everybody sees the work I'm doing, from promoting it to training to eating right, and setting that example for everyone else to go. If he's doing it, we should be doing it. I think that you could see we had a last training session yesterday, and there was a real focus on that. We're not going there with any sort of premeditated Scottish failure in our minds. We want to go there and create our own history.
Yeah,
so it's very exciting.
I suppose were you pleased with the opening draw that you get to be the team that plays the hosts in the opening game?
Well, definitely, I think that's for sure worth mentioning here. Like, we had the draw, and the draw meant that we are going to be playing the hosts, Switzerland, in the opening game of the tournament on the Monday at 6 o'clock. So to play the host in the first game, to have that spotlight was very exciting for everybody, because you train and you work hard every day so that you can get the chance to show that in the biggest spotlight. And I think getting the opening game with the host, when all the eyes are going to be on that game, gives us a chance to show the hard work that we've been putting in and how focused we all are. And we want to go and make a statement that Scotland aren't just here to participate, but we're here to win tournaments.
Yeah.
And like you say as well, we know that, you qualify for this, you finish the top 3, you qualify for the Euros, and then you can qualify for the next World Cup through the Euros.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't qualify for this, you're going to be waiting a long time to get another chance to do that.
Yeah.
So for this current group of players, we know that if we want to represent Scotland at these big tournaments in the next few years, the pressure is on to qualify for this.
Yeah.
But that is the kind of thing that you dream about. You want to have that pressure. You want to have that feeling of, I'm playing for Scotland at the highest level, and there's a lot on the line here. And if that doesn't excite you or make you nervous, then you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. But that was a good wee pep talk for anyone listening to this. Let's go Scotland. But I just wanted to kind of finish off here then saying that we've went about an hour here, and we started this conversation off by saying how you've been in the sport for 13 years, right? And being the EPFA president is a pretty important role, with a lot of pressure. And I think that you've done a lot of great things for the sport. Just as we wrap up, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on, what have you got any sort of goals in your mind where you think, I want to do this for the sport. This is what I'm aiming for the next few years. Like what in your mind as the EPFA president do you want to accomplish in the next few years?
Well, I think this was something. This EPFA Cup was something that I'm proud that we've been able to deliver on, because it's sometimes these things can be talked about, but to actually see it to fruition, like, I think is I'm delighted about it, having been involved in helping to make it happen. And I think we have to also do this with our club competition as well, because now we need to have a second club competition, because there's so many clubs who want to experience international competition. So I can see us, and it's part of our plan to have a two club competitions, so that we can have one club competition now that will qualify into our main club competition. So that over the next probably 2 years, I would like to see that happen, and then just probably more youth camps, bring on the next generation. So again, that's something that we've always kind of done, a youth camp every year. We've kind of missed out because of COVID again, and just with busy kind of schedules, and that we probably won't get one. Maybe by the end of the year, it will probably be hard now to do one, but definitely want to get back on it. And again, just to say, COVID again has really impacted on our schedule. It's thrown everything kind of skew in terms of World Cups, when to position our next Nations Cup, when to have our club competitions. So we've kind of had to rip up our plans several times because of postponements, because the World Cup was postponed again. Like, so we had ideas of where we'd have our competitions, and then we had to go back to the drawing board because of other factors. So I think it's developing a few more opportunities for new competitions, giving more opportunities to more players to be able to experience, whether it's, as say, bringing the youth camps are always great, bringing 16 players together, and they've always been great in developing new players, and the friendships last forever and on those camps, and they're always really well received. And then it's working on, as you say, other sides that we can work on, with whether it's working with psychologists and offering kind of side opportunities to think more about being an athlete. And as you say, the Football for All leadership program has been a great thing that we were kind of involved with from the start, in helping to see it develop. So we want to continue to be involved in that. But as you know, like, time moves very fast, So after Geneva, we have to start again looking for hosts. That's another big thing. And as new countries come along, it obviously offers more opportunity for the newer countries to be actual hosts of competitions as well. But we will have 3 competitions that need hosts in the next 2 years, which will be our next Nations Cup and our 2 club competitions. So the work starts straight away, trying to find the host, trying to plan those competitions, and it can be challenging, but it's enjoyable.
Well, listen, there's obviously a lot to do, and just to touch on those 2 club competitions you've referenced there, we never actually spoke about them, but that's the Champions Cup, which is the equivalent to the Champions League.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm assuming the next tournament would be the equivalent to something like the Europa League.
It'd be something like that. We'll be definitely making an announcement soon on what the structure will be. But yeah, we might have a rename of our previous Champions Cup competition. So, but yeah, I mean that's the next step, because our last one was 2018. So again, because of COVID, we're quite behind in we usually have them every 2 years, the club competitions, but because of those factors that we've no control over, we need to get back onto a steady structure of between club, nations competitions, and with the World Cup in mind, where that's going to be positioned next one. So it's all about kind of getting the plan and structure back in place, and obviously after next week, we'll have a bit more time, because as you can imagine, a lot of work goes into something like what's going to happen in Geneva. It's not just something that happens with a few weeks planning. It's been planned for months, and so many meetings, so many different aspects of between transportation and just everything from the organization point of view, with working with the hosts. And but I know it's going to be a great success, and everyone I'm sure will have a fantastic time.
Like you say, COVID put everything into kind of a flux, and I think that you and everyone at the EPFA has done an extraordinarily good job in making sure that these tournaments still go ahead and everything that goes into it. I know how much, I can't even really fathom how much work must go into having to organise these things. And I know that, it's not as if you're sitting there making bank doing all these things. So it's like, it's very good people working on this, and having things like European tournaments that are like that we can dream of playing in something similar to the Champions League or something similar to something like that. It's like having those kind of dreams in your head. None of these things internationally or in a club point of view would be possible for us. Or like you say, working on the next generation with those, the youth camps have been really beneficial in Scotland. I know that for sure. And you're working on the next generation while also giving the present one the chance to dream of doing these big, incredible things that we never thought would be possible. So
Yeah.
I think that every Powerchair Football player listening to this is very grateful for the work that you do and everyone at the association. And I personally hope that you are there to do it for a long time to come, because we talked about a lot of different areas, but for me, you can meet a lot of people that aren't in the right place for this sport and every sport. Politics comes into everything all the time.
Yeah.
And so it gives me a lot of confidence to know that somebody like yourself that I know that just wanted to help people the best they can is leading this way and doing everything that you can for us. So I think everybody really appreciates that.
Thanks, Kieran. But my kind of energy for this role, I suppose, comes from the likes of you and all the players out there, and when you see the efforts that you're putting in to presenting the sport the way we want it to be presented. Like it's definitely we're a small community, but we're actually a really progressive and community, and I think there's a drive. Everyone wants to see Powerchair football, continue to make strides and to grow and I think it's it kind of filters all the way down. Like if energy comes to making those decisions and trying to make those tournaments happen, and we get great satisfaction when they're successful and want to move on then to the next ones to make sure we make sure we continually grow and make sure we continually present a great product. As you say, it's something that you never know who's watching. You never know who's going to be watching the EPFA Cup in a week's time, and that it's there's always opportunities out there for somebody to take it in get involved that wants to maybe put a couple of million pounds into it. That's the dream, that either win the lotto or that somebody will come along and say, we want to build you a fantastic venue that you can run all your tournaments in. And so I think everyone has that dream of winning the lotto and how much they would actually put into the sport.
No, definitely. Like you say, we're all pushing for it, and I think one day that kind of thing will happen. The more that we work for it, and I really appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed this conversation, and anyone that wants to tune into the EPFA Cup will be, I believe it's going to be streamed on YouTube.
It's be on YouTube and on the EPFA social media channels. So yeah, definitely. But yeah, primarily our YouTube channel. So yeah, I mean, really looking forward to all the teams taking part. I think it's going to be, in the past, like our Nations Cup, you could probably predict, 2-3 of the teams already. But this one, I think there's going to be some really good games, really competitive. It's I think it's going to be a really exciting tournament, and I wish all the teams well and wish Scotland well too, seeing as without being biased, and yeah, really looking forward to the outcome.
There's a lot of unknown for sure, and if you want to get involved in the sport and you've never heard it before, get in touch. Like he says, if you've got some money, feel free to put it in there. And if you want to watch me score some goals next week, tune in to the EPFA Cup. Thank you so much for coming on.
Okay, Kieran, I really appreciate it, and best of luck in your week's preparation for the EPFA Cup. So.